Hello again. By 1969, Kamari and I had been on the farm for 5 years, and it was doing well. For a farm and ranch operation, it was making better than the average that most farm and ranch operations were making. We were making about a 5% return per year on the investment. We looked into the future and we couldn't see that we would ever be able to make from the farm enough money to buy one, to pay it off, because at that time, with the interest rates that were available and the farm ground that was available that you could buy, there was no way that I could see that you would ever pay for it with farming and ranching. And that's been true through all the years of my life. But the horses, Kamari was teaching riding, and I was spending part of my day every day training horses and doing some teaching as well, was making as much net profit as the farm was. And since we couldn't see any way that we were ever going to inherit an operation that would sustain us and do what we wanted, we had an opportunity to go into the horse world full time. And Kamari and I decided that we would give the horse world 5 years. And if we couldn't see the way clear after 5 years, I'd still only be 32 years old and could go do anything I wanted to do, including going back to vet school, which had been an option. And so we got a deal in Florida, and we moved to Florida to work with a man by the name of Jim Losey. We took a partnership type operation there, and we were in Florida doing reasonably well. Our students in Oklahoma, the last 3 or 4 years that we were in Oklahoma there, our students won everything. When I say won everything, we had more champions, state champions, in our stable than any other stable in the state. And we were fortunate. Kamari is a wonderful teacher. I like horses and could do well with horses. We had students that with my training and Kamari's training did very well with horses there. And so we were successful and wanted to move forward with that, and had won several state championships with all that we had. And an opportunity came to go to Florida. What had happened is I had been showing open jumpers, and I'd gone to Shreveport, Louisiana to a horse show. And there was a young couple there from Florida that were struggling with their jumpers. And I saw what their problems were, and I worked with them a little bit and got them to doing better, and they were pleased. Well, their father called me and offered me a partnership in Florida. And so we went down. We lived in Winter Haven, Florida, and Florida is wonderful 2 months out of the year. You had a month in the spring and in March, which it was wonderful to be there. Not very many bugs, and it was cool, but nice. And then the month of November was the same way. In the summer, between March and November, it was buggy. Our arena had lights around it, and it was so hot and muggy sometimes. Winter Haven sits in the middle of Florida Peninsula, so we didn't get the ocean breezes that the coast did. And so it's hot and wet. And so in the early afternoon, I didn't work with the horses from about 11 o'clock in the morning to somewhere around 9 o'clock at night. But then I rode all night. I worked all night, and we taught lessons in the morning. And so we were doing quite well, having some success there, and enjoying being in Florida to some extent. But as we went through, we were there for less than 8 months. The man we'd gone in business with, he sold a horse one day that was lame to some people that didn't know better. And so I dissolved the partnership the next day, and we went our own. We rented some stable at the county fairgrounds there in Winter Haven, Florida, and ran our own business there for a while we were looking around and deciding where and what we were going to do. But in Florida, we had is where I got a great deal of horse knowledge. We had a horse, and you'll hear of him later, called the Assassin. He had earned that name, by the way. He hadn't killed anyone, but it came close, and I'll tell you that story later. Anyway, Assassin was a good open jumper, and we were having success. Well, all of my open jumper experience had been in Oklahoma and Texas, and we rode what we call take back. You had the horse all collected and come down to a fence and jumped up and over it from in close. And so I'm competing in a horse show there in Winter Haven. And there was a man by the name of Russell Stewart, who was a professional on the East Coast and one of the more successful trainers there. And I had gone in a class, and this was the first big show that I'd shown in since I'd gotten to Florida. And I'm riding with the horse collected back, and I got around the course with one knockdown. And in jumpers, I thought I'd had a chance, but there was a lot of horses there that were really good. But as I rode out of the arena, Russell Stewart said, "Son, you've got a good horse there if you'll learn to ride him." And I looked at him and I said, "Would you teach me?" He said, "Sure." He said, "Meet me in the warm-up ring in about an hour," because then the show was over. And he took me out there, and I'm riding Assassin, and he goes out and he hangs up a single rail, a pole laying on the ground and a single rail at 5 feet high. And he said, "Now I want you to start around the arena, and I want you to gallop. And when you are going fast enough, I'll tell you, and then I want you to come down over that jump." And so, I mean, I felt like the wind was blowing so hard in my face from as hard as we were galloping that I had tears in my eyes, and he told me to come down over the fence, and I turned. I couldn't see my place or anything, and so I pulled up. And he yelled at me. He says, "Don't you pull up." I said, "But I can't see my spot." He said, "Your horse will take care of it." And so for a while there, and there were a number of people that had known that he was going to work with me, and so I was galloping down there, and like I said, I had tears streaming out of my eyes because of the wind in them. I felt that way. But anyway, we jumped the single rail for a while, and after a while, I began to see how to help the horse get to the jump. The next day in a class in the show, he had 4 people, him and 3 others, that were positioned at all 4 corners of the arena. And what they did is yell, "Faster, faster, Lee, faster." And so I'm out there galloping around. But that was one of the great educations of my time, and we'll do some more about this. But I didn't do well the rest of that show. I was riding in the preliminary jumper division, and because we would take a rail down and not get in the ribbons. Oh, we had a couple of the lower ribbons, but then he schooled me between shows, and I'll tell the story of the second show in another video. Have a good afternoon.